Recording in progress. Okay. Yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and start recording. We don't want to miss the good stuff, right? So I got my coffee with my Cool Whip.
I'm jealous.
You should be. Yeah, we're going to cover some documents tonight. And so I have not yet put out the last week's Zoom because it requires me to sit down and trim out the question and answers. It requires me to, it actually takes my computer a while with my internet connection to take a video and upload it to YouTube. So I'm learning as I do this stuff. I've got video editing software that I'm learning how to use. It's all new to me. I'm figuring it out slowly but surely. So we're going to get a lot more organized stuff together. But man, people are doing some incredible things with this assumed name certificate thing. So it's 8:09. I said we get started. I think technically hitting the record button is us getting started. So I'll say we just got started, but we'll really just dig into it here in just a moment. Somebody's already hitting up the chat. Cleaning stalls. Absolutely. Real world stuff. Ye shall toil in the dirt. Or the stalls. Ye shall toil in the stalls. Ben and I have good conversations. Really good conversations. I've learned more from Ben in the past 2 years than I would from any book or pastor or a group of pastors in 20 years.
Awesome.
I consider Ben, he lives in Indiana close to where I used to live, oddly enough. I consider him one of my closest friends, and I've never even shaken hands with him. It's crazy. I've got to drive up and see him soon. So I might just surprise him one day and just pull up. Start driving at like 4 a.m. and wake him up.
Soul Brothers.
I'm going to try to do a screen sharing, and we're going to go over some documents, and we're going to cover just a real brief thing of what the assumed name certificate is. We're going to go into some stuff you may or may not know, but a lot of this stuff is repetitive, but it requires repetition. I know I've had to have a lot of repetition. I got my assumed name certificate in September of last year, and I didn't know what I had until a few months ago. I just didn't understand it. Now, I'll tell a little story here. In 2011, I was working in Indiana. I was the project manager for a company called Affiliated Computer Services, who got bought out by Xerox. And they were responsible for, they were one of the subcontractors for the modernization of the welfare project in Indiana. And it was 4 years of my life, but I worked 18, 15, 16, 20 hours a day, sometimes 6, 7 days a week. It was insane. And I learned a lot, but one of the things that I learned was that the corporate world was not the place for me. I was good at it. The people below me loved me. The people above me, not so much. But I was miserable. At the end of the 4th year, I was sitting at a table. I was actually working remotely. I had a pretty decent salary. People left me alone. I would spend entire days. I would take 2 weeks off and nobody would even know. Like I would just pop in on some calls, send some emails. And so I had it pretty good, but when you're miserable, you're miserable. And one day I got an email. I was calling up the project director to tell him what he could do with my manager, who was a vice president in the company. And I wasn't actually that high in the company, so it wouldn't have boded well for me, I don't think, but I didn't care. And before I made the call, I just as it connected, I turned off, I disconnected the call, shut my computer, walked around the block a couple times with my dogs and thought, what the hell am I doing? I've never stayed anywhere that I'm miserable, not for long. So I shut my computer, and that was like a Thursday, May 27th, 2011. And I moved to Kentucky. I moved back to Kentucky, went got a U-Haul, moved to Kentucky that weekend. And I sat outside looking out over a holler, drinking coffee. And I wasn't even a coffee drinker at the time. And I finally got up one day and I went and printed a piece of paper out. And on that piece of paper, I got me a binder. But on that piece of paper, I wrote the words, "Who am I?" And I put that as the insert in the front of the binder as like a title page. And then I started researching. And I look back now and I understand that I was being led by the Holy Spirit, because at the time I was an atheist. And what God was trying to get me to do is realize who I am. And once you understand who you are, it's the key to all of this stuff. It's the key to it all. It's why we're here. We're here to learn who we are. And folks who don't know who they are tend to think that they are the legal name. They look at the legal name and they say, yes, that's me. They look at a piece of plastic card that has a picture on it, an image, and they say, yes, that's me, officer, that's me, judge, that's me, Mr. County official. And that's a huge mistake because it brings us into a lot of liability. And the PTB, the powers that be, are counting on us not knowing who we are and not knowing. We're not even going to get into rights. Screw rights. You don't want rights. Rights are what are given to a debtor. God does not give you any rights. You have no rights under God. You have authority. And what you need to learn is who you are as a child of God and what your authority is. Everybody talks about rights. I have rights under the Constitution. Okay, the second you claim rights under the Constitution, you're a debtor. Go look up what the word constitutor, Constitutor, I think. Constitutor. It is one who, by simple agreement, agrees to pay the debts of another. One who, by simple agreement, agrees to pay the debts of another. A constitution is a debt document. That's what it is. So we're going to dig into some of this stuff. And hold on just a second. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to share my screen so that you guys can see the documents. I scanned in a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to look through them. Chat reactions, whiteboards, participants, share screen, big green button. There it is. Screen, here it is, share. All right, everybody should be able to see my screen. Do you see a big puppy dog on a box?
Yes.
Good deal. All right, so we're going to open up some documents here. And these documents are going to guide us tonight. Okay, this is the assumed name certificate, the certificate of assumed name from Minnesota. Okay, real quick, I'm going to bring something else up. I'm going to print this off, which I thought I had already done, but I have not, because it's going to kind of guide me. So what is this? This shows that this individual right here, can you all see my pointer?
Yes.
This individual right here, and I shouldn't say individual, this man, which is Farrell, which is my surname, and this is my given name, William Ernest. You do not have a middle name. You do not have a first name. You do not have a last name. Well, you have them, but it isn't you. It's a business. This is referring to me. This is William Ernest, which is my given name, of the Farrell family. Surname, given name. This is the all caps name. They look the same, but they're not the same. If I told you to go file something in file A1, and it was a capital A and a lowercase 1, and you put it in the lowercase A1 file, would it be the same thing? No, an uppercase A and a lowercase a, same thing. And I've had people say, well, that's the same thing. No, what is the same is not different, and what is different is not the same. This name right here is different than this name right here. My parents, I inherited this name. I was given this name. This name was created by the government. On an SS5, when my mom filled it out, she changed this name to a first, middle, last. So when somebody walks up to you, like a judge, or is sitting and says, please state your full name, I would say, Your Honor, by full name, do you mean the legal name? He's going to say yes. Well, you do know that the legal name is not me. The legal name is a corporate entity, and I am a man. You're going to cause some concern in the court. They don't like that. So the assumed name certificate differentiates between this entity and this entity. This is a government document which has the great seal of the state of Minnesota on it. Seals are actually pretty powerful things. You need to read up on seals. But what is this statute that covers this? It's Minnesota Statute Chapter 333, which is kind of funny because 333 is
333.
666 divided by 2, which is funny. I just find it funny. It's coincidental. I don't get into the numerology crap. Okay, so this is the assumed name certificate. And why do you want to file in Minnesota? Because Minnesota is the only state that does it right. It's the only state that allows us to not be the owner of this name. You do not want to own the all caps name. You want to be the holder. I am the holder. What is a holder? Well, a stakeholder, shareholder. We do not own anything in this country. We own nothing in this system, the system of commerce. Men and women cannot own anything. Men and women cannot engage in commerce. If I walk up to you as a man and I say, hey, do you want to buy some apples? And you say, sure. I say, well, they're $10. Give me $10. I'll give you a bag. You say, okay, you give me $10. I leave. Never return with the apples. You don't know who I was. You have to assign a name to me. Okay, so we have to take on a fiction in order to engage in commerce. The shortest sentence in the English language is I am. That's the only place in the Bible that God tells us who he was. He says, I am, period. Once you say I am and follow it with something, you're engaging in a fiction. You're engaging in something that's made up. Okay. All that you can say is that you exist. Everything after that is fiction. So the laws of each state require us to file an assumed name certificate anytime we do business with an assumed name. What is William Ernest Farrell II? It is an assumed name. So we're going to bring something up real quick. We're going to bring up hold on just a sec. Let me find it. This sucks. Every time I go to the top of my screen, there is a Zoom menu that comes down. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. I got to go over here. That's not right either. Hold on just a moment. Let's see here. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to look at Kentucky, but it doesn't matter what state you're in. Okay, there are assumed name laws in every state, but I found this. It was written by two attorneys, Margaret Megan Walton and Thomas E. Rutledge. Margaret Walton is actually an attorney advisor for the Kentucky National Guard. Thomas Rutledge is an attorney who practices in Kentucky, I believe. But we're going to look at a couple of the things that are on this document because it really gives us an insight as to what's going on, okay? So I have a printed copy here that I highlighted some things, and I'm going to be looking at that. But it says, why certificates of assumed name? Right here. The purpose of the assumed name statute is to preclude sailing under false colors. Okay. So from here on out, anytime I talk about admiralty law, sailing on the seas of commerce, flying a flag, anything like that, and you say, oh, well, that's a bunch of crap. None of that pertains. That's more sovereign citizen crap. Okay. Attorneys use this language, okay? So don't give me this crap of when you talk about sailing under false colors or you talk about flying a flag or an admiralty flag has a gold fringe in a courtroom, and that means you're entering into the commerce on the seas of attorneys use this language. Right here it is, okay? The purpose of the assumed name statute is to preclude sailing under false colors. So if you're not abiding by your state's assumed name statutes, you're sailing under false colors. You are a pirate if you're flying false colors. What did pirates do? They would fly the flag of a country until they got close enough to a target ship, and then they would change that flag out with the skull and crossbones and board them and take their crap. And pirates are hated. They exist today. Look it up online. Do a little search for the problem of piracy. But here's some news to you. If you've not registered your name as a business name, you're a pirate. Pirates aren't looked upon favorably by others because even though they're kind of cool, unless you're in the movie Pirates of the Caribbean and you're Johnny Depp, they are not looked upon as being someone that you want to know or be around, right? And you are a pirate if you have not filed your assumed name as the name that you're flying your flag under in these seas of commerce, okay? So it says, and we're going to get into what an individual is. If an individual does business with XYZ, he or she is entitled to know that XYZ is the assumed name of 123 Inc. So they list the name of a corporation, right? And that in the event of a claim, right? Remember, I left with your money, but I never returned with the apples. How are you going to press a claim against me if you don't know what company I am, what flag I'm flying, right? It is against 123 Inc. that suit should be brought, okay? We go on down and it says, we believe that it is the purpose, we believe that its purpose is to permit persons a mean of discovering the true identity of the parties with whom they are doing business and, accordingly, to prevent fraud and deception by business entities which seek to sail under false colors. You don't want to be a ship that is sailing under false colors. You don't want to do that, okay? The reason you're incurring all the liabilities like taxes and fines and the need to get licenses, why do you think they give you a license? Because as an individual, what is an individual? An individual is an unregistered business entity. It is a pirate ship. You're flying around or you're sailing around and you're flying false colors. Okay. Or you're just not flying any flag at all, I guess. But the license identifies who that business entity is. It's got a picture, it's got a name, right? So because you're not registering your name, the government has to take care of this stuff for you, right? So what is it says real name. It says the determination of the real name of a person or business organization is the first step in the application of the assumed name process, okay? Or the assumed name statute, all right? So let's move on. Hold on, I got to move a couple pages over here. We want to get to, oh, and right here, they list the difference between an individual and surname, okay? So we're going to hop back over here real quick to this. Do not tell me that this right here, this name holder with the surname is the same as the individual. That assumed name up there at the top, if it's not registered, that's the individual, and I'm claiming to be that. So if somebody says, are you an individual? No, you don't want to be an individual. Individuals have all sorts of liabilities. You don't want to be an individual, okay? So even these attorneys break down the difference between the two names right here. It's right here, right? So let's go on down. It says the certificate of assumed name. Let's find that real quick right here. The certificate of assumed name sets forth the real name of the person. Now, this is all grabbable because they only know public stuff, right? What's a person? A person is a corporation, right? It's not a human. A human is also a corporation. Humans grabbled. You've got men and women. Everything after that is fiction, okay? It says the certificate of assumed name sets forth the real name of the business, okay? The corporate name, basically. Its address, another word for address is domicile or residence. You all know what a residence is? Look that up. It's an old Roman term. A residence is the place where a government official lays their head at night. That is a residence, okay? So if somebody's asking you where your residence is, they're asking you for the domicile of the legal name and the assumed name, okay? So once you get the certificate of assumed name, do you need a license? No. And we're going to get into that too. So let's go down here just a little bit further. And you can find this document online, by the way. It's called the Kentucky Assumed Name Statute, and there's a lot of gravy in here. We could spend hours going through this document, but we're not going to. And there's a section called, and if no certificate of assumed name is filed. Okay. You break most laws, you're subject to fines. You're subject to a lot of different things, imprisonment and all kinds of stuff, right? What happens if you don't break the assumed name laws, or if you do break the assumed name laws? Well, nobody comes beating on your door telling you that you need to register your name. Has anybody ever told you before me that you need to register your name? Probably not. So what then are the consequences of doing business under an assumed name but not filing a certificate of assumed name? Let me rephrase that for you. What are the consequences of flying false colors on the Sea of Commerce? At one time, doing business under an assumed name without having complied with the assumed name statute could result in significant fines, prison, and the inability to enforce agreements entered into under the assumed name. Now, I don't know about that. I haven't researched enough history to know if anybody's ever been put in jail for not filing a certificate of assumed name. I highly doubt it. I don't think so. If you can find one, send it to me. I'd love to read it. But let me rephrase this, okay? When you do business under an assumed name without filing an assumed name certificate, you have no standing in court. And it says it right here, an inability to enforce agreements entered into. How do you enforce agreements? You go get somebody with a gun, right? You go to court and press a claim. And that is how you enforce agreements. We have a question later tonight about how you get people to abide by the agreements that you have reached. And that's how you do it. You do it with court. But when you enter into court when you enter into court and you fly a false flag, you have no standing in court. I cannot sue you as a citizen, a person, an individual. I can't sue you for not paying me for my crack or, well, that sounded bad, for my illegal drug. I can't do that. What happens if I try to enforce an illegal agreement in court? I lose. They're going to kick it out, maybe arrest me, right? So when two debtors go to court, when two pirates, two entities who are flying false colors go to court, you got two debtors. That's all a judge is trying to do, is he's trying to decide who's the lesser debtor. But when you go to court as a registered business entity, you have standing in court. Furthermore, if you go to court as a registered business entity against an unregistered business entity, and that clerk of court allows the unregistered business entity to file anything into that court record after you let them know that you're registered by filing your assumed name certificate into the court, that's their butt, and you should press a claim against the clerk of court. But before you do that, you should give them a notice of liability and let them know that you're registered, you've done your research, you've done your due diligence, you know that the other entity is not registered. And if they allow that unregistered entity to enter anything into the court record, then they are breaking the law. They should not allow an unregistered business entity to file any kind of motion against a registered business entity. That would be like me going into court and using your name. It's illegal. It's fraud. You're flying false colors. Okay. So.
Hey, sorry, Bill, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Sorry to interrupt, but I would want to maybe clarify that when you're talking about suing somebody in court, you're suing a person, right, who doesn't have their ANC done.
Right.
When you are suing a corporation, they've got their ducks in a row, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's why I sue Apple for suing me, for sending me a crappy computer.
Yep.
Then we all have standing. If I have standing.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
If I don't have standing, if I don't have standing and I sue Apple who does, then and basically I'm just fighting a losing battle, aren't I?
That is why when people go up against corporations, they lose. You're exactly right. Then hit it. You never want to press a claim against a registered business entity because they have standing in court. Okay. Now, what would happen if a registered business entity filed against a registered business entity? Well, the judge would have to be very careful, obviously, but at the same time, why would you do that? Because a registered business entity cannot harm you. Apple can't do anything to me. Okay. But Joe Schmo acting under as a representative of Apple can harm me. So if you're going after, I should rephrase that. If you're pressing a claim against another entity, you should go after the unregistered business entity that's actually acting under the corporate veil of the registered business entity. So let's say I try to walk into a Walmart and the manager walks up to me and says, "Get out of here. You can't be in here without a mask." He's the one that's causing me damage, not Walmart. And can you go after that unregistered entity? Absolutely. Because normally what would happen if you're flying false flag, boy, that is going to come out wrong at some point during this call. If you're flying false flag colors and you, sorry, I got a whiny German Shepherd here who is distracting me. If you're flying false flag colors and you try to go against a corporation, there's a corporate veil there. And that corporate veil means that that person, that unregistered person, has the protection of the corporation because they've pledged their allegiance to that corporation. They have a shield. They have chainmail armor that keeps you from getting at their personal assets, right? But when you are a registered business entity, if I walk into Walmart and the manager walks up and says, "I don't like the way you look," and punches me in the nose, Can I go at his assets? Yes, absolutely. As a registered business entity, the corporate veil does not exist, period. Okay. Internalize that. If I'm walking down the street and a police officer, as an unregistered business entity, flying false colors, I'm walking down the street, a police officer steps out from nowhere and whacks me in the head with his baton and pepper sprays me and drags me off to jail for no reason. He doesn't have probable cause. I, as an unregistered business entity, have very little recourse. If I sue the department, am I going to win? Maybe, maybe, might not, probably not. Odds are against me. But if I am a registered business entity, do I have a lot of power? And does that police officer have personal jurisdiction or personal liability? Absolutely. Which is why there's a lot of laws and procedures and policies in place that prevent police officers from doing things that would open them up to liability against registered business entities, i.e., they are told not to pull over a vehicle if they can't identify it. I've had two instances where police officers were behind me with private tags on my vehicle, and they saw the private tags and they avoided me. They went around, they took off. They didn't want to bother with me. Why? Because when they see that I'm a private entity, they may not know all this stuff, but they are told, do not mess with that. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody may not mess with you. There is nothing, let's get something straight. There is nothing in this world, in this realm, that will completely and totally protect you from damage or harm. I should say harm, because as a man or woman, you can't be damaged. You can only be harmed.
Can I
So-
say something in a minute?
Jump in there.
So when you're talking about whether, like when you're registered, that you have, hold on, let me think how, it was like what you were talking about was relevant.
Uh-huh.
That you have standing when you're registered versus when you're not. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that stuff isn't going to happen, because it's not like you have a big sign plastered on around your neck that says, hey, I'm registered, you can't mess with me. So I wanted to maybe have you touch on and clarify that stuff might still happen,
Right.
quote, bad stuff or whatever, but
Right.
you now have recourse afterwards to take care of it. Not that it's going to prevent, I don't know, somebody from coming to your door and,
Right.
or CPS or some kind of incident.
Right. You nailed it. So let's say that I, as a living, breathing man, decide that I want to punch you in the nose. And I come and I knock on your door, you open the door, and I say, I'm going to punch you in the nose. And you say, well, you can do that, Bill, but I'm going to charge you $10,000 for punching me in the nose. I might very well say, I don't care. And then you could say, you don't understand, Bill. I have an entire team of trained operatives out back with M16A2s. And if you punch me in the nose, they are going to put bullets in you. If I don't care about the consequences, or if I'm too dumb to recognize the consequences, can I still punch you in the nose? Absolutely. There's nothing in this world that can protect you if somebody wants you. Okay. Now, what you can do is you can make the consequences dire. You can follow certain, you can make it known. You can stay within the law, and you can file some notices, and you can put some things in place. And I have a feeling that after a little while, us registered entities are going to be left alone. But right now, that may not be the case, although there are a lot of examples that I could give you where registered entities were left alone, just like when police officers were behind me and I had private tags on and they pulled around me and took off. They didn't want to mess with me. Now, am I going to be messed with? Well, yeah, we live in a fallen world. We live in a world where things happen. But if you know how to enforce a claim, perfecting a claim is the most powerful skill that you can have in our system of commerce. But if I want to punch you in the nose, is anything going to stop me? Nuh-uh. Now, if I have nothing,
What if the police officer, what if
Mhm.
you're doing a dumb thing and you are recklessly driving? So
say that again. If you're doing a dumb thing and what?
recklessly driving,
Yes.
policeman pulls you over. Now
Okay.
you're doing something that, he's charged with, taking care of.
Right.
All right,
So
let me look at this bill because people are trying to explain how to get it paid.
We got somebody who's not muted. Could you make sure you're muted if you're not talking? Go ahead, Ben.
that what there's when the cop pulled behind you,
Uh-huh.
were you speeding? Were you driving erratically? Was there a reason that he could reasonably suspect that you need to be pulled over?
Ben hits on a
For some
good
reason.
point. Ben hits on a very good point. So let me make this clear. You have two choices in this realm. You will be governed by God or you will be governed by man. Man cannot govern himself in that I, as a I hate to say the word individual, one man, I cannot govern myself. I either have to submit to the laws of man collectively, or I have to submit to the laws of God. If you are not, if you haven't caused anyone any damage, you're going to put the public in a very difficult place. For instance, let's say I'm driving down the road doing 55 in a 50-mile-an-hour zone, but the conditions, my skill, everything about that particular episode right there, I'm not doing anything reckless. 55 is fine. I'm not causing anyone any damage. A police officer tries to pull me over and give me a ticket. Can I escape jurisdiction? Can I escape consequences? There's a pretty good chance I can. But if I go out here and start swinging a bat around recklessly, and I don't hurt anyone, but I come very close to hurting people, and it's obvious that my actions are reckless, is the public going to attempt to govern me? Yes, they are. Absolutely. And they should. So I can tell you that the laws of God are a lot easier to comply to than the laws of man. You will not be able to comply to the laws of either, actually, but any transgressions you make against the laws of God have been forgiven, although you shouldn't abuse that privilege. But you cannot abide by the laws of man, and the laws of man are huge, enormous. There's entire encyclopedias of them. So you have two choices. I know a lot of folks who don't believe in God. They think that that is all just myth and fake, and that God doesn't exist, and they seek to get out from underneath the law of man. They're going to have some trouble. They really are. Because if you try to get out from underneath the laws of man, but you're not putting yourself under the laws of God, you're going to have some difficulties. And you should. So moving on, we got one more section here on this thing. It says right here, we have no doubt that such conduct may be properly regarded as obstruction by indirect means within the purview of KRS 413.190. And what they're talking about here is they're talking about a case where a corporation was doing business, but they had not filed a DBA. They had not filed an assumed name certificate. And by doing so, the Supreme Court said that we have no doubt that such conduct may be properly regarded as obstruction by indirect means. If you have not registered your business name, if you've not registered your legal name as a business, as a fictitious name, you are regarded as obstruction of justice by indirect means. Okay. And that goes for every state. So we have a need to register our name. Okay. Now, what is an individual? Well, an individual is an unregistered business, right? An unregistered legal name, someone who's thinking that the legal name is them, right? So what happens when you file in Minnesota? Well, you get a couple different documents, okay? We've posted the video on the Facebook group, Common Law Conversations, for how to register your name appropriately in accordance with the Minnesota statute. You're going to do it online. You become the name holder, and you're going to get 3 certificates. The first one is the Office of Minnesota Secretary of State Certificate of Assumed Name. You get their certificate of assumed name. You get a CAN, can. Ha. You get a can. You can get a can. The next, and that's 2 pages, by the way. The first page is there. The second page is there. And you'll see that a good bit of that page is blank. If you've watched any of my prior Zoom meeting videos, you know why. The next one is the Office of Minnesota Secretary of State Certificate of Existence and Registration. Okay. What is a certificate of existence? A certificate of existence is used by a business entity to prove that they are incorporated and legally authorized to conduct business in a particular state or jurisdiction. That is what this certificate is. It is a document that shows you are legally authorized to conduct business in a particular state or jurisdiction. Okay. And that's all this is right here. That is the certificate of existence and registration. Now, the next thing you're going to do when you follow the video is you're going to click on something that says certificate of good standing. Now, when you click on the certificate of good standing and you file the certificate of good standing, you do not get a document that says certificate of good standing. You get a certificate of record, which is a certificate of good standing. So you need to look up what a certificate of good standing is. A certificate of good standing verifies that a corporation was formed legally, has been properly maintained, and is still active. Okay. So how do you maintain a certificate of good standing and a certificate of existence and registration in most states? So if you do this in Kentucky and you fail to pay your state taxes, they will pull your certificate of good standing. You are no longer in good standing. In Minnesota, you don't have that. You don't have to pay taxes to keep your certificate of good standing. What do you have to do to prove to show your certificate of good standing in Minnesota? Well, let me show you. I have had my assumed name certificate for over a year. Okay. And the other day I got an email. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I may not be able to. That's okay. Basically, oh, here it is. Oh, no, maybe not. That's the same page. So I got an email, and that email said that I needed to go register renew my certificate of my assumed name certificate. It's not very difficult to do. You'll get an email, and that email will say you need to go renew, and you go renew it. It's free. You click on a link, and it pops up. It renews it. You can do that every year for 10 years. Why do they do that? They want to know you're still alive. That's it. That's it. That's all. What do you got to do in order to keep good standing and to keep your assumed name certificate in a lot of states? You have to, in order to maintain an LLC in California, you have to pay taxes every year. You also have to pay fees, and it's hundreds of dollars. Just forming an LLC in some states can cost you a lot of money, right? So they do it right in Minnesota, and it's the only state because they had to leave us an out. So we're not taking advantage of a loophole. We're just doing what they have to give us. Satan can't drag your soul to hell. You have to volunteer. You cannot be given a system where you can't register your name. So a lot of people ask me, well, I'm in Australia, I'm in New Zealand, I'm in England, I'm in Zimbabwe. If you are part of if your country is on the central banking system, they are registered in the United States, usually in Delaware. You can go look it up. Canada is registered in Delaware. Australia is registered in Delaware. What does that mean? Why? How do we know that these folks have to be registered in Delaware? Well, the first sign of it is that any country that wants to base its currency on the U.S. Federal Reserve note has to be registered in the United States. So can someone from New Zealand file their assumed name certificate in Minnesota? Absolutely. Yes, they can. They sure can. All right, so let's move on down the documents real quick because now we're going to get into some cool stuff outside. So certificate of good standing is a certificate of record. It looks like that. So you're going to get 3 certificates. You're going to get an assumed name certificate, which is 2 pages. You're going to get a certificate of existence and registration, which is 1 page. and you're going to get a certification of record, which is 1 page. Let's move on. A lot of people say that all this stuff is a process. It's not a process. You could get your certificate of assumed name and you could stop right there. But there are other things that you should do. For instance, you should probably go get a business bank account if you want to operate in commerce. Another thing that you may want to do, this is not a process. This is me giving you individual chunks here, because you may want to file an affidavit of life. If you want to go look up what the CSKV Act of 1666 is, you can learn a lot. It will be an entire other video. I actually have an entire presentation on the CSKV Act of 1666 because it goes much further than 1666. And people say, well, why is what happened in 1666 affecting us? Because we're still operating under the same system. You want to let these agencies know that you're alive. Right now, you're considered a decedent. By saying that you are the legal name, that legal name is a fiction. It is dead. It's not alive. You as a man or a woman are alive. And you want to let these entities know that you're alive. I know of an instance where a man actually called the Social Security Administration, recorded the call. He actually got the Social Security Administration to admit that in his file, he is listed as a decedent, even though he is alive. Why? Because at age 18, we never let the government know that we're alive. How do you let the government know? I say government. I know government doesn't exist. They're all private business entities, but we'll just use the term to make communication easier. You file an affidavit of life. Here it is. Okay. I encourage you to make your own document and not use mine. You can use mine as a guide, but please make your own document. Okay. Don't just print mine off and use it, because then you get dumb stuff where people leave something in there like the wrong name or something. So what does this say? This basically says I'm alive, and it's on your screen. You can bring this back up and freeze frame it later. I'm going to post this part of the presentation to YouTube, and everyone on here should know where it's at. So you get 2 men to witness that you're alive. Okay. And if you want to know why it should be a male and not a female, then you might want to go get this book right here. Can people see me in one part of the screen? Am I visible, or is it just the screen? Can? Okay. This is a book called A Collection of Legal Maxims in Law and Equity. It's a really good book. It cost me a couple bucks on Amazon. Inside there is a legal maxim which will let you know why this should be 2 men. And people are like, well, women are just as, no. I'm sorry, when you get into this particular side of commerce, there is a difference between men and women, and you should get 2 men to witness this. Don't blame me. I'm just a messenger. I have 2 exhibits that go with the assumed or the affidavit of life. Exhibit A, which is an excerpt from the Corpus Jurisdiction Secundum. You can look up online what that is. And there's the text. I'm just going to fly through this because it's 8:52 and we want to try to wrap some of this stuff up. And this is important. Here is Exhibit B, which is the CSKV Act of 1666. Why do you put these exhibits in here? Because it forms the foundation for why you are giving them an affidavit of life. And when you read these, you'll have a closer understanding of why you do an affidavit of life. Okay. The Exhibit B is 2 pages. I don't like the text here. I'd probably retype it to match the text in my affidavit of life. They also call this a live life claim, not a live life claim, a live life claim. You are alive. Okay. Next, here's something else you might want to send to a bunch of these agencies. Don't worry, I'm going to tell you what agencies you need to send this to. A notice to cease and desist. And I wrote this up. I used other documents and I put together my own document, which is what you should do too. To whom it may concern. And this one is written to the Federal Trade Commission, which is just one of the entities you should write to. Please correct any status maintained in your records regarding the above named accounts and or persons that erroneously reflect that Farrell William Ernest is dead whether that assumption is based on a certificate of birth created by the Commonwealth of Kentucky or otherwise. Refer to the Affidavit of Life enclosed herein as evidence that Farrell William Ernest is not dead nor lost beyond the sea. Do not get on me for using the words lost beyond the sea. Attorneys use it too. Bar registered attorneys use the same language. This is the instruction from me to cease and desist all trading on and or all administrative and or commercial activities relating to the legal name on the basis of such activity being void. Why do we put the social security number in there in two different formats? Because they use it in two different formats. 403194436 with the dashes is different than 403194436 without the dashes. We use both. Just dispel any confusion. And then there is an excerpt from the corpus juris secundum in there. And then I say, please direct all employees under your control to cease and desist any and all trading on this account and any and all other commercial operations and or activities involving the same. Notice I put in here a notice of promise of forgiveness. I promise to forgive and adjust any and all accounts regarding this matter. So you're starting over once you file this. Once you send this off, you're starting over. You are getting them to forgive you of your debts. Forgive your brother of his debts as you want him to forgive you of your debts, right? So what's the Lord's Prayer? Lord, please forgive us of our trespasses. Please forgive us of our debts, right? If you're going to get them to forgive you of your debts, you have to forgive them of theirs. So once you file this, you need to stop whatever you're doing and going against anybody else, okay, that are in these entities. Now, that means if Joe, your neighbor across the street, punched you in the face, do you have to stop trying to get remedy from him? No. But within these agencies that you send this to, there's a notice of promise of forgiveness. And we want to be fair. We want to be honorable, okay? Now, the notice to cease and desist, when they get this paperwork, a lot of times you'll get a piece of paper back from these entities, these agencies that says, we don't know what you're talking about. And then they'll include some garbage like, thank you for contacting the FTC, blah, 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 or thank you for contacting the blah, 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 blah. If you'd like more information on how you as a person or individual can do this, that, or the other, please visit us on our website. They can't admit that what you're doing is effective or right. They can't. So if you get something back from these agencies, these entities, where they say, we don't know what you're talking about, don't worry about it. Trust me, they know what you're talking about, okay? Don't pay attention to what they say, pay attention to what they do. Notice to change status from decedent to non-decedent. You've been listed as a non-decedent. If you're in court, one of the things you should ask the people in the court is, are you guys acting under the presumption that I am a non-decedent? Because you're not. You're very much alive, right? What do they say in court? If I show up in court for my legal name and I say I'm not the legal name, but I have no proof, I have no assumed name certificate, what are they going to do? They're going to issue a failure to appear. Can men and women appear? No, they can't just appear. I walked into this room today. I didn't just appear in here, you know, spirits appear. Men and women can't appear. We just walk in and out, right? How can they issue a failure to appear when you're a man or a woman? They can't, but they do because you don't have any evidence that you're not the entity. Well, now you do. Once you file the assumed name certificate, if they say, do you have any evidence that you're not the legal name? Say, yeah, actually, I'm glad you asked. I do have evidence I'm not the legal name. Here you go. You're undoing what was done with the certificate of live birth. Okay. And everybody wants this to be complicated. They want to have to file IRS this, and they want to file a UCC1 and a UCC3, and they want to do all of this stuff. And yeah, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I'm not saying none of that stuff works, but as something is done, so shall it be undone. Filing the assumed name certificate first time takes you about 30, 40 minutes. Okay. If you've already filed a few with somebody else, then it won't take you that long. Take 15 minutes, 12 minutes. How long did it take your mother to fill out the SS5 and then receive a certificate of live birth? It didn't take long at all. Why should we always want complicated solutions when usually the solution is not that complicated? So here you go. Here's the notice to change status from decedent to non-decedent. So we've covered the certificate of live birth, or the certificate of assumed name. You're going to get with that a certificate of existence and registration. You're also going to get with that filing a certification of record. How much does all this cost? Right now, as of this video, $83. Best $83 you ever spend. Okay. If you mail it in, it costs even less. Don't mail it in. Do not try to mail it in. Do it online. It's automated. Costs you $83. It's worth it. Okay. What name should women use? You should use the name that you're doing business in. Okay. So ideally, your legal name should match the name that you had before you got married or changed your name. But because that's what they look for when you're out in commerce. Can those two names be different? Yeah. Is it going to cause you some headbutting in commerce? Yeah. So if you're a female and your name is different than the name on your certificate of birth, it doesn't matter. The certificate of birth, all the name changes, all these go through the same agency within what we call government. What agency is that? The Agency of Vital Statistics. Vital Statistics has all that. What links all that? The Social Security number, right? So it's all linked by the Social Security number. When you go in and do a legal name change, it's still linked by the Social Security number. What else? What else does the Office of Vital Statistics also encompass? Fictitious name filings, assumed name certificates. Isn't that odd? Huh? Think about that. Okay, so you got two exhibits there. Notice to cease and desist, and then a notice to change status from decedent to non-decedent. Sorry about the phone there. I should have that thing on quiet. And now it is. Here is a list of the places that you're going to want to send this to. You may add more. There's 9 of them. 1, FDIC. What is the FDIC? The FDIC is the shoot, my brain is blank. FDIC. Oh, we know what the FDIC. It's the insurer. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission, Securities and Exchange Commission, the Northern Trust Corporation. If you start getting into the Secretary of State websites, you're going to see the Northern Trust Corporation and other derivations thereof pop up over and over. Okay. They are doing business as the IRS and the bar, which is what attorneys register through. Okay. I'm telling you, rabbit holes deep when you start going down it. The U.S. Department of Treasury, the Department of the Treasury, there's 2 of them there. Office of the Thrift Supervision is now part of the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the National Credit Union, the Board of Governors of the Fed. Okay. One thing I'm seeing missing here is the Federal Trade Commission. The Federal Trade Commission does not appear to be on this list, and it should be. The FTC. Why the FTC? What is the FTC? Federal Trade Commission. It's the federal entity over commerce. Now, when you get pulled over and a police officer takes, let's assume you're not registered, he takes your license and he runs the license. He's going to run that, the dispatcher is going to run that through 2 databases. He's going to run it through the state database and a federal database. The state database in Kentucky is called LINK, the Law Enforcement Network of Kentucky. If I am a Kentucky police officer, law enforcement officer in Kentucky, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, that's where I'm going to see if you've had any arrests, if you're wanted, if there's a warrant out for your arrest or anything like that in Kentucky. But how do I, as an enforcement officer here in Kentucky, know that you have a homicide warrant out for you in Oregon or Maine or Montana or Texas or Delaware? I'm going to run, the dispatcher is going to run you through what's called NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center. I used to think as a federal agent that the NCIC was owned by the FBI. They're not. All crimes in our system are commercial. That means that the National Crime Information Center is owned by the Federal Trade Commission. And you will get a letter back from the FTC, which will confirm that they own the NCIC. Send your stuff off and you'll see. I have that letter. If you all want to see it, I can show you. So you get pulled over and you're a registered entity driving on private tags. Your vehicle's not registered. You've collapsed the trust on your vehicle by giving the tags back to the government, the DMV or motor vehicle, whatever. And the officer walks, he pulls you over and you've got the private tags. Your private tags should have your Minnesota DBA number on it. It should have your registration number on it. Okay. I have examples of tags that you may want to use if you're going to do this. he is going to report that number to his dispatcher because they are required to try to identify the vehicles that they pull over. Now they're told that the reason they do that is in case somebody shoots them, then they'll know who to go after. But really and truly, what the real reason is, besides just that, is that they don't want to pull over a vehicle that they don't have jurisdiction over. What's the first thing a police officer asks for when he pulls you over? He needs your corporate ID, i.e. driver's license. He wants to know that you have registered the vehicle and that you have insured the vehicle in accordance with the law so that the government doesn't have to assume any liability for your actions or stupidity while you're driving around their vehicle. And if you've registered the vehicle, they own it. And if you're driving around my vehicle, I want some insurance so that if you cause damage, there's limited liability. When you're in the private, you have unlimited liability. When you're in the public, you have limited liability. And limited liability sounds wonderful until you realize that when you have limited liability, someone else has control of you. The only way you have full control of yourself is if you have unlimited liability. That's it. Okay. So he runs that number, but because you've notified the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, of your registration of your name under that assumed name certificate, it's going to come back to you and there will be a notation made in your NCIC entry that's going to encourage that officer to hand you back your assumed name certificate and let you go. Okay. Don't ask me for proof of that. I no longer have access to NCIC. Okay. So there's 9 entities plus the FTC. Okay. Probably should have. Real quick, let's look at taxes. Here's a 1040EZ, a U.S. individual income tax return. Who files income tax returns as an individual? Individuals. That's why they call it an individual income tax return. Notice that it even says an individual income tax return. What are individuals? Individuals are unregistered business entities. That's what an individual is. So who fills this out? Okay, so you go get a business bank account. They're going to ask you what type of business you have. The only one that comes even close to meshing what you actually are once you've registered the name is a sole proprietorship. If you look up what a sole proprietorship's tax liability is with the IRS, you'll find that a sole proprietorship has no tax liability. It's what's called a pass-through entity, where all the tax liability and income passes through the sole proprietorship to who? The individual. Once you register, where's the individual? The individual's gone. You're registered. What is an individual? An individual is an unregistered business entity. As a matter of fact, let's look up individual inside Black's Law. Black's Law 6th. Love it. Individual. I learned to read in Kentucky. It'll take me a second. Individual. As a noun, this term denotes a single person. As a noun, this term denotes a single person. Can you have a single person? Yes. It is the man or woman that thinks that they are the legal name, a single entity, right? When a man and a woman get married in the eyes of God, they become a single thing, right? One flesh. When you think you are the legal name, you are one flesh with the legal name. You are owned by the legal name. Who owns the legal name? The government, which is why you want to file in Minnesota, because when you file in Minnesota, you're only the holder. Every other state will trick you into being the owner. I'm going to prove that. But I didn't scan it in. So real quick, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to get out of screen sharing real quick. And I'm going to find the certificate I have right here somewhere. Here it is. I filed a certificate of assumed name in Kentucky. I'm not going to get into why I did it, okay? But I'm going to undo it because it's crap. Let me show you. This is the certificate of assumed name. The colors bleed because I left it out in the rain. I'm forgetful. So this is my certificate. I went into the county office. I filed a certificate of assumed name. It cost $45. Okay. I got a book number and page number back. This is actually filed in my courthouse. I can walk in and find it under the book and page number that they say it's in. Right. Let me tell you where the grabble is here. It says this certifies that the assumed name of William Ernest Farrell II, which is the all caps legal name, right? First, middle, last, has been adopted by, and I put Farrell : William - Ernest. And I thought I was being slick because I just differentiated between the two names, right? Well, they got me. What does it say? Adopted by. It's been adopted by. So I, the man with the surname and the given name, adopted the legal name. So I came home and I thought, well, maybe I didn't get away with anything, because if I had gone to the Secretary of State website, the application looked different than at the county. And they send this off. The county sends this off to the Secretary of State in my state. So they got, as soon as they send it off to the Secretary of State in my state, the guy even told me, he said, we send this off, we send your certificate off to the Secretary of State here in Kentucky. And the Secretary of State is over all commerce. They're more powerful than the governor. Okay, so everybody elects the governor, but they don't elect Secretary of State. So Secretary of State will get this, and then we'll enter it into our records, and you'll get a copy back out. And they sent me this. This is the copy they mailed to me with the sticker on it right here. This is the page number and the book number and all that good stuff. It's in book AN4, pages 564 through 564. It's just one page. So it's just 564 to 564. And so I came home and I thought, yeah, I'm doing pretty good here. So there is one state, the guy I learned this from, Douglas Herich, he was wrong. I managed to do this, and I used two different names. So then next morning I woke up and I got to thinking, and I looked up the word adopted. Well. Adopted. To adopt, to accept, to appropriate, to choose or select. I'm doing pretty good so far. To make that one's own property or act, which was not so originally. To make that one's own. I'm claiming ownership of that name with this certificate. So I'm going to have to rescind this certificate. I do not ever want to walk into a courtroom with this certificate. It would land me in jail for perjury. I do not want to own that name. Bad. So there you go. If you try to register your name in any state, and I've not tried to register my name in every single state, but all of the applications that I've looked up for different states have all required you to do something which would denote ownership, and you don't want to own it. You want to be the holder. So let's go back to screen sharing and look at the last page of our individual tax return here. There is a signature block right here, okay? That signature block would normally be you, an individual who thinks they are the legal name, signing it in a cursive manner like I have here for number 1, William Ernest Farrell II. That is my normal signature that I developed when I was 12 or 13 years old in cursive, because we still learned cursive in school back then. And I would put that right there. Well, in 2012, I looked up the definition of perjury, and it says, under penalties of perjury, I declare that I have examined this return and accompanying schedules and statements into blah, 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 perjury. So I called the IRS up and I said, if I sign this and my return is 1 penny off, is that perjury? And the clerk on the other end, or the employee on the other end, said, well, that's not usually how it works. You know, we operate with a little bit of grace, you know, blah, 1 cent. But technically it is perjury, right? And I finally got him to admit it's perjury. If you're 1 penny off, unless you can prove that that was an honest mistake, that's perjury. And in 2012, I was doing a lot of studying, and I learned that perjury is a pretty serious crime. And so I sent in my check couple grand, 3 grand, 4 grand, along with the individual income tax return. And I left this box blank. I actually put a note in there. It said, I'm not signing it, but here's the money. Guess what they did? Sent it back. And they said, you need to sign it. So I wrote a little letter and sent it back. And I said, I'm not going to sign it, but here's the money. I want you to take the check. I want you to cash it. I'm an honest, upright citizen. I want to pay my taxes. They sent it back again. This resulted in about 6 or 8 months of me going backwards and forth with the Internal Revenue Service. I had a blast. It was great fun. They never cashed the check. You have to agree every step of the way, which is why, by the way, you have to do occult rituals over and over and over, because you don't just give your soul to Satan with one act. You have to confirm it over and over and over, which is why every time I went in to renew my motor vehicle operating license here in the state of Kentucky, Commonwealth of Kentucky, they would always ask me, are you a U.S. citizen? I had to sign a form. It said, are you a U.S. citizen? And I thought, why do I have to sign this form over? And I've had this license. I'm 48. I've had this license since I was 16. Why would I have to continually agree that I'm a U.S. citizen? Because you have to continually agree to the liabilities over and over and over, which is why I don't have a license now. I voluntarily rescinded it. I gave it back. They punched a hole in it and tried to give it back to me. And the girl said, you might need this for ID. I said, but you just said that it's no longer valid. It's expired. You just punched a hole in it. Wouldn't that be inducement to commit fraud? Aren't you trying to get me to commit fraud? They wanted me to continue to use it. They want you to continue to be that entity. They don't want you to register. They love it that you don't register, because you continue to be under their control. You continue to have to get licenses. You continue to have the benefit of paying taxes, the benefit of going to jail. Going to jail is a benefit, by the way. It's a benefit of being a citizen. To pay with your time is a benefit. Okay. If you ever find yourself in a courtroom, one of the things you're going to want to do is waive the benefit of going to jail. Sounds crazy, but it's a benefit. So how would I sign this if I wasn't going to put a cursive signature in there? Well, I could sign it this way: Farrell William Ernest, doing business as William Ernest Farrell II. I can tell you that probably ain't going to fly. I've not tried it, but I don't think it would fly, because this isn't an individual. I've separated myself from that legal name. How am I an individual? I'm not. Taxes no longer apply. That's why you don't have to show Minnesota proof that you've paid taxes or fees or gotten a license in order to stay in good standing. Look up what it means to lose your certificate of good standing as a corporation. Okay. To lose your certificate of good standing, I'm going to try to find that particular document that I have up here. And we're going to talk about why you don't want to lose your certificate of good standing. Okay. I'm just going to have to search for it again. Let's just do a Google search. What does it mean to lose good standing certificate? Let's just type that in and see what comes up. A business entity can lose its good standing for several reasons, including failure to pay a registration renewal fee. There is none with Minnesota. For 10 years, none. Failure to file a required periodic document. There are no annual filings with Minnesota, such as an annual report, none, or renewal form. Well, I'm getting ready to renew, and I'll make another video on renewing my Minnesota certificate of registration, but all you have to do is click a link. That's it. 60 seconds, 30 seconds, you're done. Failure to pay various types of state business taxes or fees. There are none with Minnesota. Okay. 4 reasons. Okay. Corporate compliance, the consequences of losing good standing. Hold on, or you're going to hear a dog constantly barking. I have a very determined little terrier that he wants attention. He doesn't often want attention, but when he wants attention, he wants attention. Corporate compliance, the consequences of losing good standing status. When business owners choose to form a corporation or LLC, they must file the proper formation documents, blah, 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 blah. The states that eventually grant the right to conduct business as a statutory business entity with all the advantages this brings. I can tell you that the liabilities always outweigh the advantages. This includes appointing a registered agent. You don't have to have a registered agent in Minnesota, blah, blah, blah. So loss of good standing can damage your ability to do business. It actually, once you lose good standing as a corporation, you can't stand in court. That's why the word's good standing. You can't stand. You can't stand in court. So if you have not paid your taxes as an LLC or as a S corp, then you're not going to be able to stand in court. Okay, which is why you want tax liens, loss of name rights, administrative dissolution or revocation. You don't get any of this when you personal liability. So the individuals, the unregistered entities lose the corporate veil. They get personal liability. So you can look this stuff up. These words are important. You should probably read up on this stuff. But it's very important to maintain good standing. And it's very easy to do with Minnesota. All you have to do is go in and click the link once a year. That's it. So we've covered a lot. There was a couple questions that we got sent before we started our call. So let's go ahead. I'll just turn it over to Courtney. If you want to let us know what our questions are, we'll try to answer those.
Did you save the one question that was on Facebook? Or do I
Oh,
need
yes.
to?
Let me pull that up real quick. So I think we answered a good part of that one question that we had gotten sent. But there is a part in there that says, talking about the live life claim, it says, we are excited to send these off. We have a few questions on how to prepare them. Blood fingerprint, is that an absolutely necessary step? I can't answer that. What is the proof of life? What does the Bible tell us? The Bible tells us that life is in the blood. Okay, think about everything that a blood test shows. Okay, let me find that real quick. For the life of a creature is in the blood. This is Leviticus 17. And I've given it to you to make atonement for yourselves on the altar. What did Jesus use to pay for our sins? His blood. What did they sacrifice before Jesus' work on the cross? What did they sacrifice to pay for sins? Animals. But animal blood is an insufficient currency. Okay? And Leviticus 17 says, it is blood that makes atonement for one's life. How do you finally pay for your life? Die, right? And so what are you doing when you put blood on the live life claim? You're showing you're alive. Dead things don't bleed. You may leak blood out on the ground, but dead things can't bleed. Okay. So yeah, if you take a axe and whack a fence post, do you get blood? No. If you hit a rock, do you get blood? No, not usually. No. So you put a thumbprint in blood on the live life claim. Now, unfortunately, you're going to be sending out 10 of these things, at least. Is that quite a bit of blood? Yeah. You know what? There's worse things in life, you know. I'll show you what I did. One day I had cut myself I work on I have a farm. So there is a lot of stuff that causes you to bleed when you're on a farm. And I had a pretty significant cut. So rather than just let that blood go to waste, I took a live life claim that I was using and I put it over a piece of paper and I noted where the signature block goes, because y'all saw that there was a box with the thing. And I just put a bloody fingerprint on about 20 sheets, which was pretty easy to do considering the injury at the time. And now I can just stick those in the printer and print off my live life claim, and it puts the box around it and goes on. You should also put a piece of tape over that, clear cellophane tape, before you send it off to these agencies, because it's really not kosher or honorable or very nice to send off bare paper with blood on it through the mail. So seal it by putting a cellophane tape on it. We will get into at some future point what actually happens to one of those and how it gets routed through the system to a particular organization. We're not going to get into that right now, but yes, you probably, if you really want to do this right, you want to show them that you're really alive, and red ink does not show that. I have plenty of red ink things here. I have the red ink pad. I bought the whole red ink refill. I get the red ink pad, and I use that. I'll use that because not everything that I do in commerce do I want to bleed for, but this particular thing, yes, you probably want to. Now, are you going to get no result if you don't? I don't know. I'm not a master of this stuff. I'm a student just like you guys are, and probably will be for a long time. But yeah, you want to show you're alive with a live life claim, put a bloody fingerprint on it. If blood is required, if blood fingerprint is required, is a fresh blood fingerprint required for each individual document, or can we just do it for one and make copies for the others? I don't know. You might. I'm going to put a bloody fingerprint. I put a bloody fingerprint on every single one of them, and then I cellophane taped it, mail it off that way. That's what I did. Your mileage may vary. You have to make the decision yourself. If shedding a little bit of blood is an inhibitor to you showing that you're alive, then I got news for you. At some point in your life, you're going to shed blood anyway. So, what else? We had a question about how do we enforce when these entities don't respond? We're going to do another class, another future Zoom call on the 3-part administrative process. People say to me, they say, well, I sent a notice off and they didn't respond. Great. Silence is agreement. It's called agreement. It's called acquiescence. It's called acquiescence by silence or something like that. It's agreement through acquiescence. Okay. Meaning if you look at me and you say, Bill, you owe me $100 and I don't respond, I'm agreeing to you. It is a maxim of law that in a matter where one has an obligation to respond and he fails to do so, then you incur liability. You agree. So that's why debt collectors will send you 2 notices and then default you. That's the whole administrative process. It's a little more complicated than that, but for the most part, it is first notice, second notice, default. Once you do that with another business entity, you have their agreement. Okay. Now, as far as how to enforce a claim, you use their courts to do that. You use their guns to do that. You don't want to get a gun and go enforce your own claim. Okay. That's called mafia. You don't want to do that. You're going to want to learn how to perfect a claim in the system. It is your highest power in the system, other than knowing who you are. Once you know how to perfect a claim, you're very powerful. If perfecting a claim scares you, then you need to go do it and get over that fear. Okay. What other questions do we have? Anybody, anything? No?
I don't know if I have a question, but I got a comment. You can hear me?
Comment away. We can hear you.
Cool. I think I'll just use me personally. But if anyone has similar thoughts, then this is for you. All of this fascinating information and teaching and learning about our legal and system and our place in the world and who we are is used a lot by people to get things done, to work systems, to get out of debt, to not pay taxes and all that stuff. And for, gosh, what is it, about a couple of years now? That we've been talking. I have never led to, man, I think it's done. This is I'm gonna do this because I'm feeling that, you know, they're coming to get me, so I need to get this done. Okay, I've had no inclination. I pray about it and just say, you know, God, you're teaching me this stuff for some reason. I'm just gonna soak it up, learn it, ask questions, and think of scenarios in my head, how this works, you know, and you know, please say what calls you over and all you've got is a piece of paper that says you knocked that driver's license, you know, that kind of stuff. War game it, I guess. Never, thought that, man, I just got to do this. Okay. My perspective is that God's teaching me this stuff at a time when I'm not feeling stressed about it. There's no stress. This is practice. And I'm learning lots of fascinating stuff. Some call it gravy. Wow, I never thought of that. You know, and becoming smarter. I'm becoming actually better at talking to other people about real simple stuff. You know, real, just, you know, everyday. You know, someone had the city come to their house the other day and tell her that she needed to get rid of her chickens, right? And because of everything, and I'm just on this urban chicken list, you know, and it just had to come up. And so I went to her and said, you don't need to do that. And ask questions, you know, did they just come to your door? Did they come on your property? What, you know, what did they do? And of course, like anyone, if they hadn't been studying this stuff, she's like, I guess I got to get rid of my chickens because it's the law, you know, and they're going to make me get rid of my chickens. And I'm here new in town, and my neighbor probably turned me in, and you know, these guys came to my door. She's flustered, you know. From what I've been learning for 2 years or more, and soaking this up, and knowing who I am, and knowing who government agents and employees are, which is nothing. They have no power. I absolutely had a 180-degree reaction to that situation. I would have known exactly what to say and do when they came to my door. No fear, nothing. Passing on that to another person was extremely gratifying for me. And I think there's some communication with her, and something like this will be resolved. At least she'll learn who she is by just us, you know, communicating. So I think if there's anyone that's fearing, oh, I got to learn how to do this, I got to put my bloody fingerprint on something, what the hell, you know? What agencies? What if I forget the agency? What if I write a wrong word? You know, don't, unless you are, I mean, literally being told by God. That's my position. If you don't believe in God, then I don't know what to say. But unless you are being led, that you absolutely need to know all these details. Right now, take all of this as a pre-lesson, because you're probably going to need it later. And you're probably going to need it by helping someone who has a couple of animal control people up and get rid of them.
Hold on, Ben. You're starting to blur up a little bit. Could you repeat that last bit?
So you're probably, unless you know you need to use this right now, soak it up. Don't worry, don't fear, don't fret about whether you're going to get your T's crossed and I's dotted and what form to fill out and anything like that, until you know, okay, it's time to fill out the form.
I think he dropped off the call completely. Up, he's back.
You dropped off for a second there, Ben.
There, can you hear me?
Yep. And you
Okay.
come in better. So repeat your last bit there. You at the very end.
Right. Until, well, you guys heard all the stuff about the lady with the chickens, right?
Yes. The
Okay,
woman who said, "Yeah, we got a warning. We're gonna have to get rid of our chickens."
So you were,
Right.
where it cut off was when you were just saying that to consider this a learning time, and because you may need this later.
Yes. Everything, I'm convinced, and this is for me, everything God shows you today is something for the future. It's knowledge for the future. It's knowledge and wisdom for the future. Okay. If you're in such a situation where, you know, God's telling you, up, you got to move, you got to fill out that form, cut your thumb and put a bloody fingerprint on a piece of paper, you know, just like, you know, and all that stuff. It's already too late. The reason you're here is because you are being led to soak up this information. And the most you should be doing, you shouldn't be fearing, you shouldn't be trying to get your T's crossed and I's dotted. You should be calmly just soaking it up. It's a lecture and going, wow, that's fascinating. I learned something new today. Okay. I learned a couple of years ago about the, you know, what furs from Bill. And it was just this week that I was able to relay that learning, that teaching, knowing who I am and knowing how not to make statements and always, you know, to never make statements. That what that, and I relayed to that woman about the chickens. I said, the next time or whenever this happens, literally they could be standing at your door. They're illegally doing it. They're trespassing. They have no warrant. And they say, we understand you have chickens. The first thing that she should say is, what chickens? And those chickens can be in her living room and they could see them, you know? And they'll go, oh, well, those chickens. And she should say, what chickens? They need to get her to admit, to perjure herself, to incriminate herself by admitting that she's got chickens, just as they accused her of having. If they can't get her to say, oh, I have chickens, then they have no case. They can't even look at it and go, well, it's obvious you've got chickens, so we're going to punish you now. No, they've got to get her to say, oh, yes, those are my chickens. Okay, well, here's the deal. You're not allowed to have them, so you got to get rid of them. And if you don't, then you'll be fined and cited. And she's all afraid now. And it's like, what am I going to do? And she's panicking. The 2 years that I've been working on this and learning have prepared me for talking to that lady about her chickens this week. I haven't done any of the forms. I haven't done any of the stuff. I've only cursory looked at half, not even a quarter of the things that Bill says to look at. But I know what to look at when I'm really going to need the information. But I know that God's preparing me for stuff. I just don't need to do it right now. So it's all fun. It's all interesting. It's all learning. There's no stress about it. So I guess what I want to just convey to people, because I know a lot of this is like, well, what do I do here? What do I do here? And what if? And I have questions too. You know, if I'm buying an airplane ticket and I'm using my corporation name, my company name, and my company account to buy my plane tickets, when I go up to the, you know, to the loading bay and they say, okay, give me your ID. What do I do? Maybe you hand them your ANC paperwork, and they're going to look at it and go, what the hell is this? I just need a photo ID. Well, your driver's license. Don't you have a driver's license? Oh, no, this is, you know, so what it, well, we need a picture ID, you know, well, I'm standing right here. You get a good look at it. You know, so how do you handle everyday stuff like that? How do you handle guys coming up to your door and saying, you got to get rid of your chickens? And in the case of today, what chickens? You know? And knowing that you can say that without being a jerk is a good percentage of all of this learning and all of this teaching. That's why Bill can say he can spend 6 to 8 months writing letters to the IRS. Who says that? You're crazy. Right? So, yeah, I had a great time talking with the IRS. They were telling me all kinds of threats, and oh no, we just wrote letters back and forth.
That was what I was told. Actually, you're nuts.
Yeah, right. But when you know that this stuff is true, you know who you are, and you know that even if they do try stuff, we talked about earlier in the meeting, you know, people are still going to do stuff. People are still going to punch you in the nose, all right? But you know who you are, and you know how to get remedy for that in the private. And you know how in good standing, if you fill your ANC stuff out, how to do it in the public with other registered entities and other businesses and commerce and stuff. So just being a good person and having all your ducks in a row doesn't mean it's not going to be trouble. God never promises that it'll all be hunky-dory once you do it all right. So, anyhow, the main thing is to just learn a lot. Don't stress about the details until you're led to know, I really need to do this. But if you're thinking, why, it'd be kind of nice to not have to pay my mortgage. I wonder how I can do that and want all the details. That's, you can do that, but as Bill said earlier, it's, you know, it's probably not part of God's law to get out of debts, even if they are fraudulent debts, right? But there may come a time when that happens. The whole economy collapses and you're not paying your mortgage, and the bank still says you owe us money, even though no one in the world has money and it's all collapsed and blah, blah, blah. Oh, but you can use these credits. You can use the new world currency to pay your debts. What happens then? If you've got your ducks in a row, then you'll know how that mortgage can be collapsed and fraudulent, and then you won't have to participate in the beast system with the world money that you have vowed to not participate in. You won't have to take the ticket. You won't have to make a deal with the devil to pay your mortgage and, you know, keep your family safe and feed them or whatever. You're going to have problems as it is just trying to buy groceries without one world money. So, but that's a whole nother podcast.
Well said, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ben.
No fear. No fear.
Yep, no fear. We appreciate you, brother. All right. Well, we've been at it for an hour and 40 minutes. We're going to go ahead and end the call and show up next week. We're going to talk about a couple things. We're going to talk about photo ID and what do registered men and women use for photo ID. We're going to talk about the meaning behind the what furs, or I guess now we could say it's not what furs, it's what chickens. So
there you go.
We'll have a good curriculum up for next week, and I'll go ahead and get last week's stuff posted and this week's stuff posted up to the YouTube channel. And you all have a great night, and thank you for joining.